Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Collector's Vault, or I guess the Collector's Car, I guess. My name is Mike. I'm sorry I haven't had a lot of time to get in front of the camera at the house, because, life's busy and all that good stuff. But I have a long commute to and from work. Figured this might be a great time to get a quick video for you guys. And I wanted to finally get back to answering some of the questions I was given on Instagram. TCG0 had a question about retro formats, mainly in Yu-Gi-Oh, like Edison and GOAT and all that. And wanted my feedback on about those formats, what they mean, and I think he also asked about what their impact on the collectible side of the market. And so, here's my response to that. So, to me, retro formats, and this is just for me specifically, retro formats are what keep me into Yu-Gi-Oh. Like, I'm always going to be into Yu-Gi-Oh. I think I'm always going to be, kind of checking on it, seeing how the game's doing, especially when it comes to the collectible card market part of it, like, not just the game itself and the competitive scene, but keeping up with the competitive scene at least lets me know what cards are going to be good and hot, if old cards become playable and more valuable, and all that fun stuff. But when life got really busy, I just don't have the time anymore to, go and keep up with the newer decks and keep up with the meta and keep buying the newest and greatest deck. It's just, that's not for me right now, and not for me at this time in my life. However, when I started to look into retro formats, the main one I looked into was Edison, and I'll kind of go into that in most detail because that's the one that I have the most familiarity with, at least as of right now. So when I was younger, I played Yu-Gi-Oh. I was in 6th grade when the game came out, and it was great. Everyone loved it. It was like the next Pokemon at my school. And then when high school came around, and my friends stopped playing with me, and I kind of just slowly phased away, and I just went into high school mode where it was high school football, chasing girls, and all that stuff. Then in college, I met some friends who mentioned that they were still playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and I kind of got back into it that way. And around that time, it was the Synchro era, and actually, at the time, it wasn't called Edison format, but I got back into the game around 2010, and it just so happened to be the era that is now referred to as Edison format. So to name all the formats off, GOAT format, I'm sure you've all heard before, that's just the era. I don't remember the actual year, but it was right before Cybernetic Revolution came out, because that shifted everything. So GOAT format is a very old school form of Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot of powerful one-of cards. It revolves around the card Scapegoat, and a lot of control decks, hence the name GOAT format. And it's fun. I just don't think that's not the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Experience for me. But when I got back into the game in 2010, and my buddy Pete, who I mentioned a couple times in my videos, he showed me the ropes. He was playing 6 Samurais at the time, and his 6 Sam deck would just level me because I got some of my old cards out from back when I stopped playing. Obviously, I didn't realize this is a whole new era where archetypes are a thing and all the crazy synergies and more powerful cards, synchros, all the good stuff. And I fell in love with the game all over again. So now, the fact that I can go back to Edison format, to me, or I guess this can apply to any old format, to me, it's the closest thing to a time machine that I can really experience. Or a lot of people could probably say that it's a super hit of nostalgia, and that's why it gives me a time machine experience where I am being sucked out of my current the current time, and when I play that, when I go back and play it, it's like seeing an old friend again, or listening to a song that you haven't heard you'd heard forever, and it just it brings you back to those good times. Again, you can call it nostalgia, but I think it's a bit more than that. So I love playing it, and I love the format of how, while the meta, while Yu-Gi-Oh is still super popular right now, if someone ever tells you that the game is dying, it's just wrong. The turnouts are huge. Yeah, sure, people might say the game is not as fun as it used to be, but it doesn't matter. People still love it. People still go to it. But for me, with Edison, I just feel I can always play that. And although the card pool is not as big as it is today, obviously, it's significantly smaller, it's not like it's been solved. There's still like the Edison meta is constantly changing too, which is really interesting because you have such a limited card pool. People keep finding new ways to play the game, new strategies, and that's really exciting to me. It's also a very slower format because there really aren't any like one card crazy combos where it's like, okay, you're just gonna make a giant board of cards that just negate everything, and then like, oh, because you went first, then I guess I lose, and oh, you didn't draw any hand traps, well then I guess you lose. That's the other thing, hand traps. There really weren't that many hand traps back then. There was like maybe some of the heralds for the fairy decks. There was and DD Crow, which is probably the best hand trap in Edison format. It's one of the only ones, but it's probably the best. It's probably the best one. There was no Maxi, there was no Effect Veiler, none of that. So when you went first in Edison format or in his older formats, it was kind of like you had free reign to do whatever you want. I mean, like, to an extent. But it wasn't like you were going crazy wombo combo and you wouldn't just make the person lose turn one. I guess on a side note, there are a few examples of that, like, because again, like, there are some super powerful cards. Like, if you can still you can still use 1-for-1 ditch Dandelion, and you pretty much will that's like an insane turn one play in Edison format. Like for frog decks, you just do that. You get out your Substitute, get some tokens, and then you are off to the races. And it's at that point you probably do win the game. And Future Fusion, you drew Future Fusion, like it's a one of, or it's limited to one. You open that first turn, congrats, you probably just won the game because you're just going to start dumping frogs or heroes to the graveyard, and then you're just going to win. So there are a few outliers for like super powerful one-off cards. Trap Dusty comes to mind. Obviously, you open up that first turn, and you're in pretty good shape to just completely see your opponent's hand. So, but besides that, the majority of Edison is a lot slower, and it's a lot of back and forth, which I just think is more fun. It's like, to me, Edison is prime Yu-Gi-Oh! So when I got back in the game and I started realizing how fun it was, I fell in love with all the new archetypes. I fell in love with just the synchros. It's great fun. And even to this day, like I wish I could play it more often, even just casually. But yeah, Edison's really special to me. And my favorite decks have always been the crazy. Like some of the decks I've always loved were, like some of the synchro decks. But I've always had a thing for Gladiator Beast when it came out. Whoa, someone almost hit me in my car. So yeah, Gladiator Beast was the deck that I kind of gravitated towards, but I didn't have the cards at the time, and some of the cards were a little bit pricey, so I just didn't get the deck back then when I wanted to, but I've always wanted to, and later I think by the time the Xyz era came out, I picked up Gladiator Beast, and I was actually having a lot of fun with them. But playing it now, playing real Edison Gladiator Beast is just some of the funnest the funnest Yu-Gi-Oh! I've ever had. Now when it comes to the collectible side of things, people, like, I've always said, like, a lot of the cards I had back when I was playing, and I got back into Yu-Gi-Oh!, I sold it or traded a lot of the cards when they were at some of their peak values at the time, because, and I'm sure many people would know, that power creep in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is pretty insane. So a lot of the cards that were good in older formats, they're just completely, like, irrelevant as the newer eras and new formats and new decks, new archetypes all come out. Like, some cards stand the test of time. Like DD Crow is obviously still insanely powerful, but some cards, some staples, they just don't see play anymore. Take like MST. It was a one of in Edison because of how powerful it was. No one plays it anymore. There's a lot of other ways to remove back row. That's just like one example. Or Book of Moon, super powerful card in good format and in Edison format, and it's just, obviously still good card, doesn't see any play nowadays. So the cool thing about Edison format or any retro format is that when people want to go play it, they have to go and find those older cards again. And they have been reprinted a lot. The Rarity Collection has been very generous in giving some people like a chance to play some of these, to get some of these old cards again, and in nice rarities. But on the cool side of it, for collectibles and, trying to invest into them, if you can find some of the old school hollows and original hollows for some of those cards, there's a lot of money to be had. Like, big examples are Book of Moon. It's not only super collectible, but a champion pack super rare Book of Moon is highly sought after by everybody, especially people who want to play in the Edison decks. People, they still want to bling out their old school decks. Go format, they want to bling it out. Edison, they want to bling it out. And so you have a lot of cards, like all the champion pack cards, the turbo pack cards, like your ultra rare Chaos Sorcerers, your ultimate rare Caiuses, your ultimate rare Judgment Dragons, your super rare Rescue Cats. All of these cards still retain a lot of value, and they've gone up in value over the last couple of years because of the popularity of old school formats. Like, it really does help keep a huge portion of the Yu-Gi-Oh community alive and involved in the game. So that's something that I'm really grateful for, because there's no way I'm going to keep playing newer stuff. I mean, it's fun, but I just can't do it. But being able to just casually play old school Yu-Gi-Oh with some friends of mine, and just get sucked back into that time where life was a lot simpler. It's really euphoric. Euphoric? I can't think of that word. Euphoric, and again, nostalgic. It's therapeutic. It really is something else. I can't really explain it. It's like, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys probably know how I feel when it comes to that kind of stuff. You probably feel the same way I do when it comes to the love of these cards that you grew up with. You have an attachment to. It's a pretty unusual feeling. So that's what retro formats, especially Edison, does for me. And then obviously there's a lot of other retro formats. You have your Tengu Plant format, which is popular. You have you have things like the Vegas format, which is kind of like when Fire Fists and Mermails and Yugioh came out, and they were all a thing. That doesn't see as much play right now, but it is a thing. That was definitely a fun era when I was playing. And then there's Hat format, which is really popular now. It's kind of like up there with Edison and Goat, which I would say Edison and Goat are probably the most popular, and Hat's right there. Hat was also, I thought, one of the most diverse formats I ever played when I was playing competitively with my friends. And so it's cool seeing that. It's cool seeing people they want to build those old school the Xyz era. They want to build all those old great fun decks. And although by that time, that's when the game started getting a little bit crazy. That's when you had your crazy, even more powerful cards, like your Max C. Max C became a thing in Tengu Plant format. And all throughout the Xyz era, Max C is just one of the most powerful cards of all time. You have Soul Charge in Hat format being one of the most powerful cards of all time. You have insane engines, you have the Artifact engine, which the Hat format pretty much revolves around the artifacts, the trap tricks, the hands, Soul Charge, Max C, your breakthrough skills, all these crazy powerful cards at the time. So again, and people want to go back and buy those old cards. There's so much value now in fully blinged out Mermails, which for the longest time were super cheap. I remember original high rarity Mermails, they always had a little bit of value, but now they've all gone up because people want to play their old school Mermails. It's not because of the new Mermails that came out in the most recent Rage of the Abyss. Yeah, sure, some cards are playable now, but a lot of the Mermail cards are just completely irrelevant in the modern era. But if you go back to the retro formats, that's where you play them, and that's when they're at their peak. So people want to buy those high rarity cards for those eras. It rejuvenates a whole bunch of old cards, and it gives them life. It gives them value, which is great. So when it comes to the collectible side of things, these retro formats, I think, are insanely healthy, and I'm so happy that they are getting popular. And so, one of them is Tengu Plant, which is essentially right after Edison, and right as the first Xyz monsters that ever came out. I think it's kind of where Edison falls. That is shockingly not as popular as I think the other ones are, but I think that's definitely a really fun era that should be more popular. We'll see how that trend goes. Maybe people will start to dip out of Hat temporarily, go into Tengu Plant format. I don't know. I think some people think that format's a bit too I'm not sure why people don't really gravitate towards it as they do to the others, but regardless. So the point of this video is to kind of answer your question, TCG0. I hope I answered your question properly. That, like, all these different formats, they're fun, they are nostalgic, and like I said, for me, it's like a time machine, and it takes me back to when I was younger, when I was playing those cards, playing those decks, and it's an incredible feeling. And again, from the marketing and the collectible side of things, it brings life to all these old cards that would never see play ever again. It gives people a reason to want to collect them, invest in them, or just buy them because they want them right now. So it's a really great thing. I can't tell you how many times you've seen some cards that were like super expensive at the time of their release. They got reprinted, and they dipped down to, you know, insanely low prices, and you thought, wow, this is just like, it's borderline bulk now. Not anymore. These cards have now been giving another chance to be wanted by the player base, and it's amazing. All right, if you guys actually want to get more knowledge on retro formats, because I am definitely not like a connoisseur of them, I'm just a fan. I would highly recommend these few retro format channels. They're the ones that I've caught every now and again, and I think it's great. If you want to see some really fun matches, they're happening like pretty currently at like card shops in the country that host retro format tournaments. Take a look. I think it's called Legacy Retro Formats. They do a lot of Edison, Goat, and Hat matches. Really fun. Again, if you don't have your old school decks together just yet, watch that for some inspiration and some ideas. And you might even just for fun to see these matches again. It's really fun. And for a better history of all retro formats, I would highly recommend you check out Who Needs Meta. These guys do videos about they have like matches of almost every single retro format, and a few videos that go into the details and the history of those formats and even the rulings. Highly recommend it. So shameless plug. I just want you guys to go check them out, because the channels are, in my opinion, highly underrated. And I think that's all I have for right now. I'm almost home. I think this little this car recording was actually a pretty good idea. If you guys think this is a bad idea, doing the recordings in the car, let me know. If you like it, maybe I'll keep doing it. I'll keep doing it because I have a lot of time to kill in this car when I go to and from work. So thank you guys for watching, and I guess I will see you in the next video. Hopefully it's in my basement and not in the car again, but yeah, we'll see. All right, so until then, take it easy.